This might be the most unbelievable, heroic sports story I'd ever heard in my entire life. And I am appalled that I didn't know it until now. Because I am an Olympic sicko. I live for it. The Olympics are on. I'm there every day. I'm watching the Olympics. I am sat 10 toes down on the couch watching the Olympics. All right, I am taking pictures of the schedule before I start work that day so that when I sit down, I don't spoil anything. I can go watch all the highlights of all of the things that happened that day so I can stay absolutely plugged in on what's going on. But in 2002, I was but a wee child, and I did not know that one of those great sports stories was occurring in the 1,000 meter short track skating event. I love short track speed skating. It is fantastic. It's the little ice rink oval where the guys are like, just zipping around in circles. It's complete chaos. It's like roller derby with, giant knives on your feet. It's absolutely insane. And the U.S. was pretty good at it. Right? We had some good short track speed skaters that were fun to watch, and so they were really prominent events in the United States that would get your kind of front page coverage. But in 2002, the unthinkable happened. In the gold medal race, which the way it works in short track, I know this before I even started looking up stuff for this video, is you have heats, and then out of the heats, you end up with a quarterfinal, and then a semifinal, and then the actual final. And in the actual final, there's a guy named Stephen Bradbury. Stephen Bradbury is an Australian short track speed skater who is the second oldest guy in the entire field. He was in the final, and then this happened. All of the racers are competing for the gold. This is American Apollo Antonono. I just remember him inherently because he was at a couple of Olympics after this. The Chinese skaters right here. There's another skater from South Korea on the inside. This is all of those guys. This is Stephen Bradbury, the Australian. He's in the race. These guys are all racing. There's 4 of them, obviously 3 medals, so a lot of drama going in there. And they all take each other out. And Australia's Stephen Bradbury comes around the bend and wins the gold medal. And now it's funny, right? It's like an amazing... This is the least amazing thing in this entire story that I'm about to tell you. Because him winning this medal is just divine intervention to give this guy something that he absolutely deserved. And the irony is he then wins the gold medal at the time where he least actually earned it, but it came around anyways. At his final Olympics as the second oldest skater in the field of the 1,000 meter short track event, everybody in front of him on the final turn, as they all force themselves through to try and get the gold, they all knock each other over. And Stephen Bradbury wins the gold medal for Australia, which is not exactly a short track powerhouse, by the way. That was probably pretty easy to figure out. But anyways, the story of Stephen Bradbury to this point is genuinely unbelievable. So 1994, you might not know this, first year that short track speed skating was in the Olympics. In Norway, short track speed skating makes its debut in 94. Australia wins the bronze medal in the relay. And if you've ever watched a short track relay, it is very entertaining. But they win the bronze medal in the relay. And so Bradbury did have an Olympic medal before this event from 1994. And in the races, the 500 meter and the 1,000 meter, Stephen Bradbury was actually one of the favorites. He was one of the guys that when people were looking at the field, they went, Stephen Bradbury's probably going to win a medal. Right? He was in the prime of his career. It had just gone into the Olympics. He was clearly absolutely cooking. He races out in his heat. He finishes second in the initial heat to get to the quarterfinal, which he then wins to qualify for the semifinal. In the semifinal, Bradbury was knocked over by a rival, and he limped home in 4th and was eliminated. Okay, this was in the 500 meter event, I believe. And then in the 1,000, so he gets knocked over, kind of taken out. Then in the 1,000 meter, which is the event that he was really favored in, he fell in his heat after being illegally pushed by a competitor who was later disqualified. And he came home more than 30 seconds off the leader's pace after being shoved. Nevertheless, because of his high rate of accidents, he actually finished 24th out of 31 competitors because some people just weren't even able to finish the races. So a guy who was later disqualified for cheating, basically, and continuing to shove opponents, shoved him over. And he was eliminated before the quarterfinal in the 1994 Olympics in the 1,000 meters, trying to get that individual medal. During a 1994 World Cup event after the Olympics, this is trigger warning. It's actually kind of nasty, but it's worth reading in totality because it's wild. Another skater's blade sliced through Bradbury's right thigh after a collision. It cut through to the other side, resulting in him losing 4 liters of blood. Bradbury's heart rate had been close to 200 BPM at the end of the race, and this meant that the blood was pumping out fast. All 4 of his quadriceps muscles had been sliced through. All 4. Basically, the top half of his leg was sliced in half. Because this is your quad right here. Top half. Sliced all the way through all 4 quad muscles. He lost 4 liters of blood, and he thought he would die if he lost consciousness. The injury required 111 stitches, and Bradbury was not allowed to move his leg for 3 weeks. His leg needed 18 months to get back to full strength. I mean, that is the type of adversity you can't even imagine. That is, I would, short of taking one of these knives straight to the neck, the worst injury you could possibly have happen in this sport. 18 months without a leg at full strength. He couldn't move his leg for 3 weeks, and he nearly died. Right after he had this double misfortune, getting basically taken out in the 500 and in the 1,094. Somehow after that, this Bradbury guy puts himself back together, and he's headed to the 1998 Winter Olympics. Bradbury, Niziolski, and Kieran Hansen, who won that medal in 1994 for Australia, which was the first ever Winter Olympics medal in the short track, getting that bronze. They showed up. They got knocked out in the semifinal, I believe, or in the qualifying race. They finished 3rd. They missed the final by 1 place, even though their time was way faster. That's okay. He'd already won a medal in the relay. He was again regarded as a medal contender in the individual events, but was impeded in collisions with other races in both the 500 and the 1,000. He came 3rd in the heats of both races. You have to finish top 2 in the races to qualify for the next round, so he basically showed up for both heats as a medal contender in both, but it was involved in crashes in the heats of both of his races, and he's just eliminated immediately. 2 races, and your Olympics are done, right? And then in 2000, September 2000, so 2 years, a little more than 2 years after the 1998 Winter Olympics, he broke his neck in a training accident. Another skater fell in front of him. Bradbury tried to jump over him, but instead clipped him and tripped headfirst into the barriers. As a result, he fractured his C4 and C5 vertebrae. He spent a month and a half in a halo brace and needed 4 pins to be inserted in his skull and screws and plates bolted into his back and chest. Doctors told Bradbury he would not be able to take to the ice again, but he was determined to reach another Olympics. He wanted redemption after the crashes in the individual races in 94 and 98. And even though he conceded that he would be past his best in terms of challenging for medals. Little did he know. That brings us to the 2002 Winter Olympics, where Bradbury is now held together by duct tape and prayer. All right, this dude's bolted all over everywhere. He's got a repaired quad that was completely sliced. He's got a broken neck that's been held together by pins and a metal plate. And he decides, he manages to qualify for the Olympics in 2002, despite being one of the oldest contenders there. He is now 52. So you subtract, let's say he's 53 at the end of 2026, right? So you go 2026 to 2002. That's 24 years. He's 29, maybe? Am I okay? I really hate math. So 53 minus 4, you're going to get the 49, and then minus 20. Yeah, 29. I was right. I had to say the math out loud, so there's your indictment of the Florida education or whatever, right? But he took an unlikely gold in the 1,000-meter event. But the story of how he got to that final was hilarious. He won his heat convincingly, right? The heat, if you're this type of short track speed skater, you should be able to win that pretty easily. But in the quarterfinals, Bradbury was allocated the same race as Apollo Antonono, the guy who ends up crashing in front of him in the final, and the favorite, who was the favorite from the host nation, Apollo Antonono, and Marc Gagnon of Canada, the defending world champion. Only the top 2 finishers from each race would proceed to the semifinals. So he had to finish ahead of one of those 2 guys in the quarterfinal to get to the semifinal, to get to the final where he ends up winning the way that he did. He finished 3rd in the race, and at the end of the race, he thought he was eliminated. But Gagnon was disqualified for obstructing another racer. Basically, when they reviewed the tape, there was an incident under review, and they disqualified him, which advanced Bradbury along with Apollo Antonono to the semifinal. Then they cooked up a plan. Basically, by the time he got to the semifinal, they knew he wasn't as fast just trying to race all of these other guys. So Bradbury's strategy from the semifinal onwards was to cruise behind his opponents and hope that they crashed, as he could not match their pace. His reasoning was the risk-taking by the favorites would cause a collision due to a racing incident, and if 2 or more skaters fell, the remaining 3 would all get medals. Additionally, as he was slower than his opponents, trying to challenge them directly would also increase his own chances of becoming part of a crash, which had obviously happened repeatedly in his career. In the semifinal race, Bradbury was in last place, well off the pace of the medal favorites. Because by the time you get to the semifinals, I mean, if only 2 people are advancing from every race, we've narrowed it down from a ton of speed skaters to all of a sudden it's all of the fast guys. Defending champion Kim Dong-sung of South Korea and multiple-time Olympic medalist Lee Ja-jun and Mateo Turcotte of Canada all crashed. In the semifinal, this happened too. The exact thing that happened. Now, obviously, it wasn't necessarily on the last turn. I don't know when it was. But there are 4 people in these races, unless, some extra people get advanced because of disqualifications or whatever. All 3 of the guys in front of him crashed. The only reason he was in the final, because we cooked up a plan, he's like, look, the only way I'm going to be able to win, I'm not as fast as these guys anymore, is to hang back. Stay off the pace, go like 90% instead of 100%, where maybe I stay in the blast radius a little bit, stay out of the blast radius, but close enough to take advantage, and then just take advantage. And that worked in the semifinal. Then putting him in the final, right, where he's up against Apollo Anton Ono, Lee Ja-jun, and An Hyun-soo, and Turcotte, who was also advanced as a part of the crash. They all wiped out in the final corner. And he won again. Basically, in consecutive races to win the Olympic gold medal, Bradbury just skated at 90% to make sure he was out of the fray and hoped they all crashed. Even in his plan, his wildest dream was maybe 1 or 2 of them go out. I can get a medal. I can finally get an individual medal, like a bronze in the 1,000, and then I can retire with that. In his wildest dreams, I don't think he could have imagined that they all went out. Every single one of them goes down. And he skates on through to win the gold medal. When he knew going into the semifinal, he was probably the slowest guy there. And he survived like an unbelievably loaded quarterfinal. But good for him. I mean, this is just such an unbelievable story. I would watch a documentary about it. I mean, 2 injuries of horrifying nature. 2, Olympics, at least in the individual sense, of just incredible bad luck. He went into 2 Olympics as a favorite to win a medal and didn't. In any of the 4 events that he competed in for various mishaps and crashes and, disqualified people shoving him out of the way or whatever. And then the one time he goes in not as a medal favorite, he comes up with a plan. This is a great example, right? As much as you'd be like, oh, this guy's the best example of getting incredibly lucky. And of course he did. But the only reason he was able to get lucky is he came up with the only plan that could work. He came up with the only plan that could work. Right? Sometimes people are embarrassed to do what you almost need to do to try to win. Bradbury wasn't. He wasn't embarrassed to be a third of the entire track behind the crowd, because he knew the only chance he had of actually winning was to be moseying a third of the track behind the entire crowd. And you know what? He's sitting somewhere in New South Wales with a gold medal, and good for him, because the more I dug into this story, just the crazier it got, and I needed to share it.